Hello, welcome back. In the previous section, we understood why Spark, what are the advantages of the Spark, what is Spark, what are the components of the Spark, and also we understood the history of the Spark. As a part of this lecture, we'll try to understand Spark in bit more detail. Let us say you have a one single desktop. What and all you can do? Can you just think of what and all you can do as a part of using only one desktop? You can watch movies, isn't it? I have watched many movies. There is nothing wrong in watching movies as a part of the desktop. I hope you guys have done it. So now apart from that, we will be using Excel applications. Apart from that, we'll be using many other applications which are very relevant for your work. As a part of using a single machine, we can watch movies, we can use Excel application, we can use some other applications as well. What is that you cannot do when you have a single machine? Any idea? We cannot really process the huge amount of data. That's a problem, right? So then what is the solution? Any thoughts here? So another solution can be, we can have, instead of having one system, we can have cluster of system, right? With the cluster of systems, as we are not able to do a data processing of huge amount of data by using a single machine, we will not be able to do a data processing of a huge amount of data using a single machine. We'll be able to do a data processing of the huge amount of data by using a cluster. That is what we are thinking. But if you think, is that enough? Not really. We need a framework to do the processing of the data if it is spread across all these three systems. So we need a framework. It will not be able to go ahead and do the processing of the huge amount of data mere having the cluster of machines. That is where our Apache Spark comes into picture. Apache Spark is a computing engine which does the data processing in parallel across the different machines in a cluster. Apache Spark is a computing engine for a parallel data processing across the clusters. Now that we understood what is Spark, we understood the philosophy around Apache Spark. Let us try to understand what is the Spark architecture. As a part of the Spark architecture, we have three important components, which are they? First one being driver process. The second one being cluster manager. The third one being executors. We have executors. These are the three important components of Spark architecture. Let us say, now that we have three important components, if you just observe it further and try to understand it further, the Spark session, which is a part of the driver process, is having a two-way conversation with cluster manager. At the same time, the cluster manager is having a two-way conversation with the executors as well. At the same time, even driver process is having a two-way conversation with the executors as well. Now that we understood the Spark architecture at a very high level, we'll try to look at the components of the Spark architecture one by one. So driver process is very, very important. Believe me, it's very important. What it does is, it runs the main function of the whole Spark code. As you know, main function is important in any of the programming language. The Spark driver process runs the main function, and also it is responsible for three important things. Which are they? Let us try to understand them. First and foremost thing is, it maintains the information about Spark application. What do I mean by that? Spark application is nothing but whatever the Spark code you are going to write to do some data processing tasks, that is called as a Spark application. Please remember this for the upcoming lectures. The second important thing is, it is responding to the user's program or input. That means, let us say you are submitting a code to the Spark application. So somebody has to respond back to the user saying what is happening, right? That will be done by driver process. Next important task of a driver process is it analyzes, distributes and also schedules the work across the executors. Let us say you submit the Spark code. What it does is it takes that particular code, see what is the code about, by analyzing it. Then once the code is analyzed, whatever the amount of work which is involved, that gets distributed. That gets distributed to where? To the different executors. And also scheduling need to be done, and that will be done by driver process. Now that we understood driver process is responsible for three important things, it is very essential for the functioning of the Spark application. It is in a way heart of the Spark application, because as you know, it maintains all the relevant information during the lifetime of the Spark application. If you don't have a driver process, it is so difficult to get the work analyzed, distributed and scheduled. Let us move on and understand what are the different aspects of the executors. First and foremost thing is, executors, whatever the code which is assigned by a driver process would be executed by the executors. What they do is they take the commands from driver process and then promptly execute those work or command from the driver process. And once that is done, what they will do is they will report it back to the driver process. Very simple. Receive the work, whatever is sent by a driver process. Once the work is done, report it back to the driver process. Next thing being the cluster manager. So the cluster manager, usually if you see, in case of Spark, it uses either standalone or either Yarn or Apache Mesos. One of these cluster managers would be used by the Spark. What happens is, as we already discussed, Spark is not getting into the hassles of storage and resource management. It is using other cluster manager. In this case, either Yarn, Mesos and also standalone. What is the work of the cluster manager then? Cluster manager controls all the physical machines and also it allocates the resources. Now that the Spark driver process is maintaining the Spark application, it is responding to the user's input and also it analyzes, distributes and schedules the work across the executors. There should be somebody who will be taking care of the physical resources, right? When I say physical resources, what should be the RAM? What should be the capacity? It is not that we are executing only one task. Remember, there will be hundreds of tasks which will be scheduled across the Spark clusters. So depending upon the work which is being done by the different executors, cluster manager maintains the status of each of the resources and see whether the particular resource is available for next analysis task or not. So that will be done by the cluster manager. To summarize, key important points are, first and foremost thing is, Spark employs a cluster manager like Yarn, Apache, Mesos to keep track of all the resources. We are talking about the physical resources here. The second aspect is driver process. Driver process is responsible for executing the driver's program, where it is executing the driver program across the executors. These are the important points to be remembered as a part of this lecture. Thank you.